Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with Toronto-based author, speaker, and transformational leader Julian Chapman. He has over 3 decades of experience engaging teams and organizations, from small groups to thousands of employees, build their leadership capability. His leadership knowledge is augmented by his 30-plus year second career as a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, from which he retired in 2014 at the rank of Brigadier-General. He travels extensively to assist Forrest's clients in designing solutions to achieve extraordinary results using the Forrest methodologies. We got to the core of how he ticks and who he really is, along with a little bit more. Enjoy this interview.
Good to meet you, Joe.
Nice to meet you. How's life?
Oh, it's great. It's great. It's a gorgeous day up here. Although a little warm, but probably not as warm as it gets down there. So.
Yeah, Kansas City can really hit the heat pretty good. Where exactly are you located?
Toronto, Canada.
Oh, man. Are you a baseball fan?
My kids are. They're much better at it. They have more patience than I do for the sport.
Well, I'll tell you what. You guys got one of our marquee players from the Royals, Whit Merrifield. I don't know if you remember.
Right.
You may have heard the story where the Royals went up there and 10 players couldn't go because they weren't vaccinated. Well, one of them was Whit Merrifield, and he made a comment that if the Royals were any better and they were in playoff contention, he would have thought about getting a shot. So before the trade deadline, they traded him up there. So there you go. So anyway, I was just thinking about Toronto, but I interview a lot of musicians from Toronto, and I really love the way that you Canadians roll. I mean, the universal health care, musicians get grants to make albums all the time. You guys put a high priority on health and art. I really find that just very human of your government to do that.
Well, it's interesting, Joe, because I think, our music industry is as successful as it is because the effort was really made to nurture the music industry. The film industry, on the other hand, didn't get the same nurturing. And it's a sad state of affairs, but we're very lucky with all of the whole industry here.
Absolutely. Well, I'm curious in your line of work and with what you've done over the last couple of years. COVID was quite a jolt to all of us. How did you do? How did you change? How did it affect the way that you did business and lived your life?
It's a great question, and it was certainly a shock. In the services industry, like we are as a consulting firm, there was this moment of trying to figure out how on earth do we add value to our clients. And as a result of that, I started on the first Friday when the world shut down, I started writing a missive to all my clients, and it became a weekly missive, and I'm still writing it. and that in turn kind of led me to a point where I was approached to write a book based on this missive. Now, unfortunately, because the missive tends to meander all over the place from week to week, it was hard to create a narrative that would flow in a book. So I ended up writing a book from scratch. So that's how we managed to stick handle it. I guess that's a Canadian term, right? It's a hockey term. How we managed to stick handle COVID on this end. And, we ended up doing a lot of work in the U.S. because Canadians are very cautious by their nature. And I would say that even to today, we're still being very cautious about fully opening up, and businesses are being cautious in their approach to bringing people back to work and that sort of thing. So that's another facet of how we dealt with COVID.
So on paper, I have a pretty good idea of what you do, but if you had to break down what you did, you're at career day right now. You're in front of a bunch of grade school kids, and one of them looks up at you and says, "What do you do for a living, and why do you do it so well?" How would you explain that to them?
That's a great challenging question. So I started off my civilian career in leadership development, and that is training leaders to be the best possible leaders, to create leaders of character who achieve extraordinary results. And And over time, that gradually morphed into how do you help the leaders that are now empowered with this capability to be more effective in their day-to-day work. And so we started looking at the systemic issues that impact organizations. And the intent is the work that I do is consulting with companies to help them to create great places to work that achieve the strategy of the organization. And I say it that way because it's about the tension between the people and the task and bringing those two sides together in the best way possible. And the best way to do that is by creating great managers and great leaders in their organizations. Now, that's probably not a grade school answer, but
no, that breaks it down.
That's probably the best way.
Yeah, that breaks it down. So let's go back to your early years, your childhood. Talk to me a little bit about growing up, what you did, what some of your dreams were, because you're obviously highly motivated. How did all that pan out? Is this the life that you envisioned?
Again, these are terrific questions that get to the heart of things. I grew up in a small farming community northeast of Toronto, and grew up on a farm and that sort of thing, and then said, you know what I would really be interested in doing is I want to join the Army. So I joined the Army at 17, a young private soldier, and to try it out in our Army Reserve. And I kind of stuck with it for 34 years after that, and reached the rank of Brigadier-General on my retirement from the Army. And it probably wasn't necessarily the path that I thought I was going to take. It was one of those things that just naturally happened, and it's very much a journey. The book that I wrote is called The Managerial Leadership Journey, and it talks about all of the mistakes that I made along the way and the lessons that were learned. But it is a journey. It's never just an end point. And I think I always had this tension of wanting to be in business and also wanting to have a military background. So I managed to bring those two things together, and that's what I'm doing now. So.
As I've already said, I've lauded the fact that, you're from Canada and there's so many things that I really enjoy about your country. What is it what do you enjoy the best about hailing from Canada?
I would love to say that we have humility here, but I seem to notice more and more we're losing our humility. We have the best of both worlds. We're kind of caught in the middle of the Atlantic between America and Europe, and so we have social programs that are sort of rival Europe, but we also have that entrepreneurial spirit that made America great. On the other hand, so we tend to be kind of caught in the middle, and in a lot of cases, unsure of who we really are as a nation. As a result of that, we refer to ourselves as a cultural mosaic, where people come to the country and they retain so much of their own background. And I guess we're going through a journey ourselves right now in understanding our nature, the nature of our relationship with our First Nations, where we sort of came in and took over and shunted our First Nations off to the side, and we really have to come to grips with how we've dealt with the Native Canadians over the years. And so again, it's a journey for us as well. Who knows what in 100 years whether this experiment will still stand the test of time or not.
That's a great answer. So I'm curious, being in the business of being a consultant, you have to give so much out. There's a lot of emotional and intellectual energy you have to put into what you're doing. How do you parlay that out with being who you are? You obviously have to feed yourself as an individual. You have a life. So how do you kind of meter both of those, giving enough to the client, but also retaining enough for who you are and what you want to do with your life?
It is a tension. I learned a long time ago in my dual life of being an Army reservist and being in business, of trying to balance those two things as best as possible. And so I've always had sort of this split brain mentality of these two extremes, and then layer on top of that, I have my wife and I, we have 4 children and all of that. So it is really a careful balancing act, and I know that people are struggling these days with the tensions of work-life balance and the likes. In my spare time, I'm also the vice chair of a charity here in Canada, similar in a sense to the United States, called Wounded Warriors Canada, which is a charity specifically around helping veterans and their families and first responders now and their families to deal with the likes of PTSD, because mental health is such a critical issue these days, and we saw it in spades coming out of COVID.
So I'm curious, in your line of work, with all the clients that you've worked with, what's been the best fan letter, best response from a client that you've ever got that you will return back to?
Well, we run a program. It's a year-long leadership development program for high potentials in corporations, and I can't speak to any specific moment, but when those people have taken the time to go through this program and have really identified where they want to be and who they want to be. So often our lives we get into a job and we sort of, that job becomes all of us, and then as we're getting later in life, as I'm beginning to get later in life, that realization is, as time is winding down, good grief, the world's gone past me. I haven't fulfilled my goals and my dreams. And one of the things that we do in this program is we help those leaders to define who they are, why they're here, and what they're trying to build. And that's the feedback from those individuals, whether it's that they wanted to make a major life change or the likes, changing their lives completely and turning it around, and maybe they've even left the company that put them through the program, but they've actually managed to fulfill their goals and their dreams that had been buried. And we get notes and we get accolades or comments from those individuals who are graduates of the program of just how instrumental it has been in their lives. And I guess that's probably the best indicator. Life truly is a journey, and they're on this journey, but they're able to get off the bandwagon for a moment, I guess, if that's the right term, and look around and see, what did they really want to be? There's that great Lily Tomlin line. As a kid, I always said I wanted to be someone. I only wish I'd been more specific. And so it's about people getting to that point, right?
Certainly is. So every day you wake up, we've obviously established with the previous question, you have your personal life and business life. What is it that you look forward to the most? What motivates you every day to live the life that you do and do what you do?
I think it's, what really jazzes me, if you'll pardon the pun, is being able to help people, being able to be there and help them. And sometimes that goes beyond a monetary contractual obligation, and just being able to help to create those great places to work, because far too often, to use the euphemism, I guess, from the late 19th century, there are those dark satanic mills out there, and helping people to navigate those difficult situations, those difficult elements in their work life is what jazzes me. And I think one of the things, I talked about helping people to clarify who they are, why they're here, and what they're trying to build. and what it's about providing that clarity, and that jazzes me, is helping people to get really clear on who they are and what they really want to do. And so that gets me going every morning. And it starts. I was working with a client the last couple of weeks in Switzerland, so that's a 6 a.m. start and then a finish probably at 6 or 8 o'clock at night, kind of thing, as you're dealing with other time zones. But it gives me the energy to go on.
No matter who we are and whatever we do in our lives, whether it's business, music, art, whatever it is, art, music, books are a big part of our growth. And I'm curious, was there an album or a book when you were growing up that really moved you?
Wow. I think, I'm one of those music types that I can never remember the name of a song. And I back in the day when I had an iPod and I'd play music from my iPod for sessions, and people would go, "That's really eclectic," because it would come from all sorts of different directions. It would be, a hot modern hit combined with maybe a piece of classical music or a pipes and drums playing. So I can't speak to any particular music. I grew up. My father was a filmmaker, and for me, film is probably is kind of where I tend to go as a result of that. And then growing up in that sort of industry, and I tried my hand in that industry for a short period of time. So film is is kind of where my head's at. But I guess going back to books for a moment, I got a tremendous amount of solace in my life by reading the Chronicles of Narnia, I guess is the term, by C.S. Lewis, and that really sort of inspired me as a young kid, and so those provided me with kind of a bit of inspiration. And I was a great reader of all sorts of books back in the day. I unfortunately don't read nearly as much as I wish I could these days. But yeah, I would say that those are the books that created a foundation for me.
What about heroes? Who have you looked up to? Who's been kind of a resounding role model for you in your life?
Well, being an Army guy by both trade and interest, there are many generals that I look at as sort of role models. I think in looking back, and I've used this, and I've actually quoted him a couple of times in my own book, but Field Marshal Viscount Slim is truly a role model. He was a fellow that joined the British Army as a young soldier, rose all the way to being a field marshal, and he commanded what's known as the Forgotten 14th Army in Burma during the Second World War. It's a piece that people don't know about in history, but he was a very self-effacing, tough guy, but very self-effacing, humble leader. And he's sort of a role model for me. And as well, I'm a great fan of Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington, and his campaigns in the Peninsula, and ultimately being the victor at the Battle of Waterloo and the like. So I realize that those are kind of ethnocentric heroes, but they're the ones that I kind of look up to as a soldier.
If you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now, who would it be? Who would you like to talk to?
The Dalai Lama, or none. He's first and foremost on my list. I just think that his again, back to humbleness, I suppose, but his humility and his purpose on the planet is so fascinating that I think that that's an easy one to point to right away.
That came out quick, yeah, and he's a wonderful one. So if you have a dream tonight and you run into your younger version of yourself, let's say around 20-ish, and you could give your younger version one piece of advice based on the wisdom that you've gained throughout all these years living on the planet, what would you say to your younger version?
I would say go for it. Far too many times in my own life, and particularly in my early life, I kind of backed away. I chose easier routes. There's two roads to go, the rough and the smooth, and always choose the rough because that's where the sweetness lies. And just, not to question what's going to happen. Just let go and let it flow.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your clients, but ultimately you live your life. You have a perception of who you are. Who do you think you are?
I sound like a constant refrain here. That's an amazing question. Who am I? I'm just a person. I'm just a person. I've left fleece on the hedges of life, okay, which is a line that we use when we describe the type of people that we hire in Forrest and Company. I've had some tough parts in my life, but I'm just a person, and I think everyone is just a person, and that we have to just recognize, and that yes, some people did extraordinary things and the likes, but I'm just a person. I care very much about our planet. I care very much about our country. There's no doubt I am a nationalist at heart, but I think I'm also an internationalist, that I think we have to care about our earth and the planet on which we live. And so, I'm kind of locked. I suppose my own humility, which at times can look very self-deprecating, is a dangerous path that I wander down every now and again. But I do just feel that I'm just one of the billions, and I guess however many billions have gone before me. But that's really what I'm all about, and I'm all about living every day as though it's one's last, because one day I'm probably going to be proven right. But I guess I don't know if that's the kind of answer that you were looking for.
There is no framework to this other than what answer you give, and that was a great answer. I love it. And with you talking about humility and being grounded, man, you would love talking and being around jazz people. I've encountered a lot of different walks of life, and I didn't know this until I got into jazz radio, but jazz musicians, and it happens, the higher you go, the more humble and gracious and, human that they are, and they possess such wonderful talent, and it's so refreshing to be a part of that community as a journalist, because that's just what they do. That's who they are. And they pass that feeling on, the elders do, to the youngers all the time. It's an eternal flame that exists within that art form.
It's interesting you say that. One of our associates has written a book, Tim Elliott, and he's a jazz musician. He's also an Anglican priest, or I guess Episcopalian, as you would say in the United States. And his book is Clarity and Courage, and he uses jazz as a metaphor for life as an improvised journey as you go through your life. And I think that's very true. I mean, I guess if I went back to your original question of, who am I? I have a very dangerous creative streak in me that I'm always trying to find new. And I think it's always about trying new things and doing new things. And the reason I say it's dangerous is because I can upend so many things in that search for the new and the new opportunities and the likes. But I think that's at the foundation of jazz as well, right? Is that creativity, that ability to flow with things. that it's not, it's not necessarily the firm, rigid structures.
Yeah, amen. And that's the thing about it. When you get probably a more creative punch, the more that you are a renegade. So that's the beauty of the art form, for sure. But in your realm of being an author and your managerial journey and everything that you do, if anyone out there wants to learn more about you, pick up your writing, anything related to your world, where can they go on the web?
Well, Amazon.com, the Managerial Leadership Journey, an unconventional business pursuit, is available on Amazon. We also have a website, the ManagerialLeadershipJourney.com, and then they can certainly find me and find us at Forrest, as in the trees, but with an extra R, ANDCO.com. So forrestandco.com. And I'd love to hear from anybody. Human beings are incredible creatures on this planet, and their perspectives are always fascinating. So I'd welcome that at any point.
I agree. This has been wonderful. Julian, thanks for opening up, man. Good luck with everything. I appreciate your time today.
Well, no, I appreciate you having me on. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, and music around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.